Good morning, everyone. Today we shall start the chapter Judiciary from your Civics book. Let's start. In India, we have a rule of law. What does this rule of law mean? It means that law applies equally to all persons and that a certain set of fixed procedures need to be followed when a law is violated. It means the law should not be arbitrary. There should be a following of fixed procedures which should be in accordance with the constitution, and in front of law everyone is equal. Law will apply to everyone equally, uh, from a rickshaw puller to the president. Everyone is equal in front of law, right? That is called rule of law, and um, only by following a certain fixed procedure this law or to implement this law, we have a judicial system that consists of mechanism of courts that a citizen can approach when a law is violated. Right? The citizen can go to court when or when his fundamental right or whenever to enforce the law. We of course have a judicial system, the three-tier system in which we have the lower court, the high court, and the Supreme Court. As an organ of the state, the judiciary plays a crucial role in the functioning of India's democracy. It can play this role only because it is an independent institution. So let us just understand the functions of judiciary, which though we have already discussed in the previous chapter as well, and also try to understand the independence of judiciary briefly. The main responsibility of the judiciary is to settle disputes, that we already know, and it settles disputes between groups and individuals or groups and the government. All disputes are settled according to rule of law. The judiciary protects the rule of law. It ensures that the rule of law is maintained. It also safeguards the rights of the individuals. It protects the rights of the individuals as well. Now, let us briefly understand the independence of the judiciary. To ensure justice or to ensure justice is delivered in a fair and unbiased way, it is necessary that the judiciary stays independent of the influence powers between the legislature, executive, that is the government, and judiciary is an important provision of the Indian Constitution which helps in achieving this. The Indian Constitution has ensured the independence of the judiciary through a number of measures. Some of the measures, like first, the legislature is not involved in the process of appointment of judges. This ensures that party politics does not influence the appointments. So it is, and to a great extent, we can say the appointment of judges is not a party politics. It is above the party politics. The judiciary is financially independent of the executive or the legislature. The salaries and the allowances do not need the approval of the legislature. And the other measure which says that judiciary is independent, the judiciary has the power to penalize anyone who is found guilty of contempt of court. So, being disrespectful or disobedient towards a court of law amounts to contempt of court. So, the decision taken by the court has to be honored. One cannot use any derogatory language or any disrespectful language against the court. It will be taken as a contempt of court, and the judiciary has the power to penalize such person. Judges have a fixed tenure, means the duration in which they work. Only in exceptional cases the judges are removed. The Chief Justice of the removal of Chief Justices. And the let's just move further. What is the role of the judiciary? We have just now been discussing about that, and the courts take a decision on a very large number of issues. Okay, the courts take a decision on very large number of issues. They can decide that no teacher can beat a student, or about the sharing of river waters between states, or they can punish people for particular crimes. Okay, the work of judiciary can be divided into the following. These are the works which we have just discussed in the previous section also: dispute resolution, judicial review, and upholding the law and enforcing fundamental rights. Let us discuss the dispute resolution. The dispute resolution, the judicial system provides a mechanism for resolving disputes between citizens and the government, between two states governments, and between the center and the state government. The judicial review, what do we understand by that? As the final interpreter of the constitution. Actually, the courts play the role of an umpire, right? Whenever, if suppose in a game or in a sports, rules are not being followed or rules being broken, that time the referee or the umpire shows them the red card, or decides whether it is acceptable or not acceptable, or they hold the action invalid. So in the similar way, the court, when it finds the decision of the government, if it is not in accordance with the constitutional guidelines, then it can hold the law made by the legislature as invalid, if that law or if the decision is not according to the uh, core values, or not keeping in the core values of the constitution, or if it is against the very ethos of the constitution. So the judiciary has the power to strike down particular laws passed by the parliament if it believes that these are a violation of the basic structure or the basic ethos of the constitution. This is called judicial review. Upholding the law and enforcing fundamental rights. Every Indian citizen can approach the Supreme Court or High Court. They can go to Supreme Court or High Court if they believe that their fundamental rights have been violated. So whenever any individual feels that his or her fundamental rights have been violated, they can approach the court and seek remedial. Okay. What is an independent judiciary? We have just now in the beginning also discussed this. Let's go through these points again. The Indian Constitution protects the citizens against the influence of the rich and the powerful people by providing for the independence of judiciary, and this is done by the separation of powers. We have three organs of the government with three bodies are there: the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. And the judiciary is independent, and there has been a separation of power done. These separation of power has been done so that there is no dispute regarding the exercise of powers. And this judiciary, as I said in the beginning, also acts as an umpire. They do a check and balance. These organs do a check and balance, and they ensure that the fundamental rights of individuals, um, unless or otherwise, without following the prescribed procedure, cannot be taken away from any person, right? The courts, it means separation of power is also explained here. It means that the other branches of the state, like the legislature and executive, cannot interfere in the work of the judiciary. We had discussed in the beginning also regarding the appointment of judges also. There is very little or no interference by the executive and or the legislature. And the judiciary is also financially independent of the executive or legislatures. The salaries and the allowances do not need the approval of the legislature. The judiciary also has the power, as we had discussed in the beginning also, to penalize or to punish anyone who is found guilty of contempt of court. So being disrespectful or disobedient towards a court of law amounts to contempt of court. Okay, the courts are not under the government and do not act on their behalf. Of the government. The courts are not under the government and do not act on their behalf. That was the same point there. The Supreme Court and High Court judges are appointed with very little interference from the other branches of the government. Once appointed, it is very difficult to remove a judge. As we have discussed also in the beginning, that we haven't seen in the history of India till date no removal of Chief Justice, right? And it is very difficult to remove a judge. So impeachment motion. So though very recently only an impeachment motion was brought in by the opposition. Just and very recently also, only this happened, but that proposal also failed. It is independence of the judiciary that allows the court to play a central role in ensuring that there is no misuse of power by the legislature and the executive. So there will be a check on the government as well as on the legislature, that there is no misuse of power by the legislature or the executive. It also plays a crucial role in protecting the fundamental rights of citizens, because anyone can approach the courts if they believe that their rights have been violated. Let us understand the structure of courts in India. There are different levels of courts in India. There are several courts at the lower level, while there is only one at the apex level, at the top level. The courts that most people interact with are what are called subordinate or district courts. These are usually at the district or tehsil level, or in towns they hear many kinds of cases. Each state is divided into districts that are presided by a district judge. So India, as we discussed, as a single integrated Supreme Court at the top, High Court below them, and the district and the subordinate courts at the lowest level. The judiciary resolves disputes, reviews laws, and enforces the fundamental rights. It is responsible for resolving any disputes which may arise between two citizens, between a citizen and government, between two state governments, or between central or state governments. Courts are the final arbitrators on matters related to laws and their interpretation. Right? And as I now let's move with the further discussion on this. Each state has a high court, which is the highest court of that particular state. At the top is the Supreme Court, that is located in New Delhi and is presided over by the Chief Justice of India. The decision of the Supreme Court is binding on all other courts in India. That's why it is said that India has a single integrated judicial system. So whatever decisions or judgments given by the higher court would be applicable on the or will be overriding over the decisions of the lower court. Okay, this is the pyramidal structure of the Indian judiciary, in which we see at the top the Supreme Court, or at the apex level the Supreme Court, the High Court, and then the District Court. In India, we have an integrated judicial system, meaning the decision made by the high courts are binding on the lower courts. So if a decision taken by the lower court uh, with which, if a person is not satisfied something else in the decision, and if they go ahead with the change in the decision taken by the lower court, and if they if they bring about a new decision on the particular matter, then the decision of the higher court will be binding on the lower court. So that is why it is called an integrated judicial system. Another way is through the appellate system. That is what I just spoke of, that exists in India. This means that a person can appeal to a higher court if they believe that the judgment passed by the lower court is not just. Different branches of the legal system. We have two different branches of legal system in India: the criminal law and the civil law. What do we understand by the criminal law? Criminal law deals with the conducts or acts that the law defines as offenses. Right? The law, when the law defines something as an offense, for example, theft, harassing a woman, to bring more dowry, murder, it usually begins with the lodging of an FIR, that is first information report, which we had discussed in the previous chapter also, with the police who investigate the crime, after which a case is filed in the court. Right? If found guilty, the accused can be sent to jail and also fined. Civil law deals with any harm or injury to the rights of individuals. For example, disputes relating to the sale of land, purchase of goods, rent matters, divorce cases. So in this, under the civil law, a petition has to be filed before the relevant court. Rent matter, either the landlord to the tenant can file a case. The court gives a specific relief asked for. For instance, in case between a landlord and a tenant, a court can give order or can order the flat to be vacated or emptied, you can say, and pending rent is to be paid. So it's very important we discuss, does everyone have access to courts? In principle or in theory, we can say all citizens of India can access the courts in this country. What it means is that every citizen has a right to justice through the courts. See, the first point of getting justice is your ability to approach the court. You should not be barred from approaching the court, right? So court should be accessible to all, right? And as individuals, as citizens, we have the right to justice through the courts. The courts play a very significant role, a very important role in protecting our fundamental right. If any citizen believes that their rights are being violated, then they can approach the court for justice to be done. Okay? While the courts are available for all, in reality, access to courts have always been difficult for a vast majority of the poor in India. Legal procedures involve a lot of money and paperwork, as well as take a lot of time. For a poor person who cannot read and whose family depends on daily wage, the idea of going to court get justice often seems remote. So it's a very time taking and very expensive affair, because okay, let us just discuss with some more example whether everyone has access to the courts. This is two pictures have been shown here. In picture 1, in 2001, the drought in Rajasthan and Odisha meant that millions faced an acute shortage of food. There was an extreme shortage of food. In photo 2, we see, meanwhile, the government godowns were full of grain. Often this was being eaten away by rats. So justice would have been meted out if that grain which is lying wasted or which was being eaten away by rats to the poor people, then probably justice, we can say that the poor people, those who are uh, very much anxious about the future because of the crop failure, because of the drought, if they get the access to food, it would mean that they get access to justice. Does everyone have access to the courts? Here is a second example in which two pictures again have been given. In pic 3, in this situation of hunger amidst plenty, hunger amidst plenty means there is enough, but still hunger is there. An organization called, this is though the name of the organization here, Hunger Amidst Plenty, an organization called the People's Union of Civil Liberties or PUCL filed a PIL in the Supreme Court. It stated that fundamental right to life guaranteed in Article 21 of the Constitution included the right to food. So right to life includes, because the godowns were overflowing with grains, the Supreme Court ruled that the state had a duty to provide food to all. Now we can see even in this pandemic situation, the central government of the country is planning in such a way that more and more people should get access to food. So grains free of cost are being provided to the people, right, at the ration shops, so that this difficult time, which could otherwise have been more fatal, more dangerous on the lives of poor people, and ours being a democratic country, it's the duty of the government to ensure the right to food for all. And as we know that the true meaning of democracy lies in the fact that no one goes hungry to bed, right? So it is the duty of a democratic country, a democratic government, to provide justice by allowing the people, especially particularly the poor people, because poor suffer the most, have access to food. Now there is another example showing you whether everyone has access to the courts. In this we see in photo 4, if okay, it is the same story that is being continued. Photo 4, if they therefore directed the government to provide more employment, because it is the duty of the government to provide food to the people. So for that, people need to be given employment to provide food and commissioners to report on the implementation of government schemes. This is one more example here. For the common person, access to courts is access to justice. So it has to be ensured by the government that all the poor people have access to the justice. The courts exercise a crucial role in interpreting the fundamental rights of citizens. And as you saw in the above case, the courts interpreted Article 21 of the Constitution on the right to life to include the right to food. They therefore ordered the state to take certain steps to provide food for all, including the midday meal scheme. Okay. Another issue that affects the common person's access to justice is the inordinately long number of years that courts take to hear a case. The phrase justice delayed is justice denied is often used to characterize this extended time period that courts take. So it is very truly said that justice delayed is justice denied. So we have to ensure that decisions should not be pending for long, and at the same time there should be more efficiency in the functioning of judiciary so that people have more faith. Though in spite of all this, we can say courts have, there is one more point being given here. In spite of all this, there is no denying that judiciary has played a crucial role in democratic India. They are serving as a check on the powers of the executive. and the legislature, as well as in protecting the fundamental rights of citizens. So they have dual work. The judiciary has dual work. One is they don't misuse the powers, and they work according to the basic structure, or according to the basic structure of the constitution, or according to the constitutional guidelines. For a government, the constitution is a religion. So the governments have a moral duty as well as legal, they have a legal binding on themselves to work according to the constitutional guidelines. Okay, and for that the courts are there. They interpret the constitutional guidelines, they interpret and they hold any law, as we had discussed earlier also. If they find invalid, not according to the basic structure of the constitution, then laws can be, held invalid. And the second role of the court is to protect the fundamental rights of citizens. Okay, the members of the Constituent Assembly had quite correctly envisioned a system of courts with an independent judiciary as a key feature of our democracy. So independent judiciary ensures more access to courts, more access to justice, and more controlled way of working. Means government cannot be allowed to work in an absolute manner. They have to be very, very sensitive to the demands and needs of people, and they have to work according to the constitutional rules or constitutional guidelines. So here we discuss public interest litigation. In response to the situation in India, the Supreme Court in the early 1980s devised a mechanism of public interest litigation to increase Court on behalf of those whose rights were being violated. The legal process was greatly simplified, and even a letter or a telegram, as we were discussing earlier, that the judicial process is quite costly and it takes a lot of time. So here this PIL would solve the problem of access to justice, right, which was really very difficult earlier. So during the 1980s, the access to justice has been made more possible, and even not so much of paperwork is there. Just even a letter can be written, or a postcard can be written addressing to the Supreme Court judge or the High Court judge about the problem, right? The legal process was greatly simplified, and even a letter or telegram addressed to the Supreme Court or the High Court could be treated as a PIL. In the early years, we've seen PIL was used to secure justice on large number of issues, such as rescuing bonded laborers, saving the bonded laborers from inhuman work conditions. Bonded laborers who had to go through very inhuman conditions, exploitative work conditions, and securing the release of prisoners in Bihar who had been kept in jail even after their punishment term was complete. The midday meal we had discussed earlier also, that children now receive in government and government aided schools because of PIL only, right? So children, thank you so much. I hope you have understood all the aspects of the chapter, and if there are any questions, you are most welcome to ask those questions. Thank you so much.